Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. No one likes to be punished for a petty thing, and neither does our OP, who managed to get even more revenge for it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Petty revenge against petty shipyard security. I work in a shipyard. COVID has seen to some pretty harsh measures, which I actually endorse since shipyards attract workers from all over the world. One of these measures lists the maximum amount of people that can occupy the elevator at once. Only 3 can use the elevator at any given time, but only 1 if you transport materials alongside. Cue the petty fireman. Me and my co-workers, were going up the elevator. We had a metal bar with us that does technically constitute as material transport, but that bar is barely 40 millimeters in diameter and 1.5 meters long. Not a problem for creating a COVID risk situation. As soon as we reach our floor of choice, a fireman was standing outside and gave us a write-up for violating COVID safety measures. That basically means that our next offense will result in a temporary ban from the yard. I was very angry and I go into full-blown petty revenge mode. I grab a size 20 long bolt and carry it with me the rest of the work, waiting for the opportunity to stick it to the fireman. Just as my shift is ended and wait for my elevator, the very same fireman queues up behind me. The elevator opens, I enter, the fireman tries to follow. A grin comes onto my face as I stop him and show him the bolt. He looks like an idiot as I tell him, "Material transport, your rules. Now get out or I'll report you to your superiors." Best moment of satisfaction ever. Edit. I can understand why it might be confusing for someone who endorses the rules to take revenge on someone else for enforcing them. The problem is that those rules are loosely written and open to interpretation that can be used as a hammer for disrespectful, grumpy security to abuse and beat down on unsuspecting workers as a means of venting their frustrations. I endorse the rules because they provide work viral security to which is otherwise a germ-spreading environment. I feel no remorse and would even shove that bolt right up his butt and tighten it with a wrench if it hadn't got me into jail. And our second story. Some years ago, this happened. Some years ago, I was attending a welding school to get my degree, and an elderly gentleman came in asking for some help in repairing his mailbox. After some dialogue, it turns out there were some kids in his neighborhood that were constantly breaking his mailbox with ride-by baseball bat attacks, and that this was the 3rd mailbox he had to replace, and didn't have the money to buy another one because of his severely fixed income. He wanted to know if we could fix it and how much it'd cost him. Well, we looked at the mailbox and it was absolutely trash. It looked like someone had not only hit it with a baseball bat, but also ran over it with a tank. After some deliberation between us, we decided to help the gentleman out. So we proceeded to do what welders do best. We welded. We put together a mailbox made with 3/8-inch steel plate that we shaped to be the same size as his previous one, made the pole 5 feet long so that it buries with about 3 feet of material, and even put it in for him. We even put the little red flag and a door on it. Looked like a regular mailbox from a little distance. Fast forward 2 weeks, the elderly man shows back up with a cake his wife baked and a huge grin on his face. Turns out the kids that were doing the destruction showed back up, tried to break his mailbox by doing their regular drive-by, and ended up only breaking their hands and had to go to the hospital. Turns out it was one of his neighbor's kids. Mailbox suffered a very small ding, not even enough to consider damage. And our last story. Evil stepfather gets what he deserves. When I was 15, my mom started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built half-pipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later, he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there, it escalated into full-fledged beatdowns for the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day, he decided to take my extensive Pokemon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of it all because 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being effing nerd playing with Pokemon cards and reading comics and books. I would like to add that he was a middle school teacher, and in his off time, refereed and umpired local middle and high school sports games. My mom never intervened and in fact acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money because the little crap will just spend it on comics and other gay crap. One day, I took maybe $3 in change out of his change jar so I could buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of an a-hole and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I'd done. This man actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, proceeded to beat me senseless. At that point, I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that he had been trying to talk my mom into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge, ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple of years miserable and afraid. Once I was out on my own, I didn't speak to my mom for several years. We eventually reconciled, and by that point, they had married. I was a lot bigger than I'd been as a young teenager and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out that she had stage 4 cancer and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him, so she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he'd receive a set amount of money upon separation and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He'd spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debt shortly before they started dating. And my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation, and despite the agreement, had been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal. I put an immediate end to that. He was past the deadline to remove his personal effects, and they were now legally mine to dispose of as I saw fit. I sold his baseball card collection, around $14K, and his autographed sports memorabilia, roughly $11K, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment, along with several finished pieces of furniture that he'd made. $6,500, I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, platinum band, 3 diamonds, roughly 2 carats, wedding band, his coin collection, I also collect coins, and some tools and other odds and ends. Now comes the real fun. Around a month ago, I finally saw him at the grocery store. As he was leaving, I approached him. I told him I'd sold his collections as he was pushing his cart out towards the car. He reacted exactly as I expected. He took a swing at me multiple times. I already had my phone ready to dial 911. Several of these punches missed, and the ones that did connect didn't have much effect because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s, and I no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try and punch me as I spoke to the 911 operator and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled up into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school, and because he'd never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had just been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he'd also beat me as a child, causing several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring from local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least that's what they've heard from kids who were attending summer school at the time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him in or help him out, so the abusive stepfather ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so he could afford the rent on his crappy little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though that Walmart is not the closest Walmart to my house, that's now the only place where I can go grocery shopping or to purchase anything that I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need to just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him on it, he said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible and had to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside, and it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money, I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll use my credit card." I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set, so on Monday, when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above-ground pools, and as he's ringing it out, I'll tell him, "I know that daughter is going to just love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway." Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.